It started as a simple weekend trip, a chance for two people to spend time together after months of dating long distance. But what unfolded in a quiet New Mexico motel turned into a nightmare no one could ever imagine. This is the story of Emily Lambert, a young mother whose nights ended in tragedy and the chilling investigations that exposed the truth. One evening in March of 2014, a young woman was captured by a security camera while she was leaving the bar. About an hour later, she was declared missing. She was 30-year-old Emily Lambert, a mother of two. Somehow, no one at the bar saw what might have happened to her. Other than the video footage, the only thing police found was a chilling damaged audio recording. It's 2014. Emily Lambert is 30 years old and teaching at an elementary school in Dallas, Texas. Her boyfriend, Robert Ellie, is far away Carlsbad, New Mexico. He was working in the oil fields. Even with the distance between them, they've managed to make their relationship work for over 8 months. Emily first came across Robert on Facebook. They had some mutual friends, and at first, she actually thought he was someone else. But not long after, they ended up at the same bonfire party, and that's where they really met. The connection was instant. Emily seemed genuinely happy with Robert. One of the things she loved most about him was how easily children warmed up to him. He just had a natural way with them. Emily had two daughters from her first marriage, and Robert seemed to enjoy spending time with them. On the weekend of February 28th, Emily and Robert made plans to spend time together. After an 8-hour drive, Emily finally arrived at Robert's place in New Mexico. On Saturday, she called a friend from Carlsbad. She sounded happy, like she was really enjoying the time over there. But just a day later, everything changed. Emily's mom got a troubling phone call from Robert, and that was the start of something far more disturbing. On Sunday morning, after leaving church, Emily's mom noticed a message from Robert on her phone. He asked her to call him back. When she did, she pressed him for answers. Robert, what's going on? What's the bottom line? And that's when he said the words no parents ever want to hear. Emily is missing. He explained that the two of them had gone out to a bar the night before and seemed to be having a good time. But according to Robert, at some point, Emily left, and he claimed that he didn't know where she had gone to. Emily's mother urged Robert to call the police right away. A little after 12 p.m., he finally dialed 911. Emily's parents didn't waste any time. They packed up and began the long drive to Carlsbad, determined to find out what's really going on. And since Emily's daughters were with them for the weekend, they brought the girls along. For the next 8 hours on the road, worry filled every mile. With each passing moment, they imagined every worst-case scenario a parent could fear. Meanwhile, local detectives rushed to Robert's motel room, hoping to piece together what had happened the night before. Robert told them he and Emily had gone out for dinner at a few local spots and ended the night with drinks at the motel bar. But when the investigators looked around the room, things didn't add up. Emily's clothes were still neatly folded. Her phone was sitting on the nightstand. Her car was parked right outside, and even her purse was left inside. It was as if she had never planned on going anywhere at all. After a brief round of questioning, detectives learned that Robert had gone back to his room after a couple of drinks and fallen asleep, believing Emily would eventually return. But when he woke up, she was gone. For the moment, investigators chose to stop pressing him and instead turned their attention to the motel itself. If there were answers to be found, they hoped the security cameras might hold them. The motel itself had no security cameras, but when detectives walked up to the lobby bar, they noticed one indirectly at the entrance. They immediately pulled the footage and rewound it to just before the night Robert claimed Emily had left. What they wanted to see was simple. Did anyone live with her? And was Robert really by her side when she walked out? At around 11:30 that night, the footage shows Emily leaving the bar. And she's moving quickly, almost as if in a hurry. But what was she rushing towards? No one knew just yet. The footage makes it clear it's Emily Lambert leaving the bar alone. The way she walked out said everything. Her body language looked urgent, almost desperate, like she just needed to get somewhere fast. She appeared upset, her eyes looked straight ahead. Outside the motel, there were no cameras, no witnesses. Detectives had no way of knowing where Emily went after she left the bar. Meanwhile, at the station, another investigator sat down with Emily's parents and her two daughters. Not long after, Robert arrived at the station to give a full statement. He wasn't under arrest, so for now, he was free to leave whenever he wanted. During questioning, Robert stayed calm and cooperative. He carefully walked detectives through how he and Emily first met and laid out each detail of what they had done the day before she went missing. On the surface, his account seemed steady, but investigators knew that every word would need to be tested against the evidence. On Roberts' phone, investigators found photos from the night before, images that lined up with the story and seemed to back up with what he had said. But then he brought up something else. According to Robert, a strange man at the bar had started flirting with Emily. He described how she was wearing a short skirt, and every time she leaned over to grab a drink, the man would stand right behind her, blocking the view. Robert insisted that he never saw Emily leave with another man. He said she had been chatting with someone else, but nothing more. According to him, he walked out of the bar alone and went straight back to the motel, leaving Emily behind. Now, the detectives couldn't ignore one fact. Robert was the last person to see Emily before she disappeared. When they asked about his temper, he insisted he had never been violent. But once the investigators spoke to his ex-wife and a former girlfriend, a different picture began to emerge. Both described the man far less calm than he claimed to be. With that, detectives started to see cracks in his story, enough to make them question everything he had told them so far. The lead detective began to wonder if Robert was hiding something. To get closer to the truth, he asked Robert to take a lie detector test. Robert agreed without any hesitation. For the investigators, the goal was clear. They wanted to see if his calm exterior would hold up under pressure, and if the test could reveal what he could be keeping from them. Robert stayed composed through the entire test, showing no sign of concern. But when the results came back, it was clear he hadn't passed. The moment he saw the scores, Robert insisted there had to be a mistake and demanded another test. With that, his role had shifted from a witness to a suspect. Meanwhile, another detective returned to the motel, hoping to find someone who could shed new light on Emily's disappearance. They spoke with a guest staying in the room next to Robert's room. The guest remembered hearing loud fights between Robert and Emily during the night, but Robert had told investigators that Emily never came back to the room. With this new lead, detectives pressed him again. This time, his story shifted. He admitted they had had a drunken argument, which was sparked when Emily said she wanted to drive. Robert went on to say that Emily suddenly stormed out of the room and headed straight for her car. But then, according to him, a strange man pulled up and stopped right beside her. Robert then claimed that he saw Emily sitting in her car when another man pulled up in a white truck. According to him, Emily suddenly got out and climbed onto the stranger's vehicle. The investigation now had a clear focus: find the white truck and find Emily Lambert. Robert described it as a typical four-wheel drive. Though he couldn't identify the driver, the only details he offered were that the man was large and wore a cowboy hat. Robert claimed he followed the truck out into the countryside. After a while, it pulled over, and according to him, he stopped right beside it. Robert claimed that when he pulled up beside the truck, things quickly turned violent. He said the driver came at him with a pipe, and that Emily jumped in front, taking a blow to the head. According to Robert, he panicked, jumped back in his car, and sped off, afraid that the man might come after him with a gun. He insisted he thought the detectives would eventually find the guy, or that the stranger had dropped Emily off at a hospital. At least, that's what he said happened. With this new version of events, the detectives began to suspect that Robert was still holding something back about Emily's disappearance. Determined to get the full truth, they kept pressing, pushing Robert to finally come clean. Still, Robert clung on to his story, insisting he truly believed that's how it happened. He told detectives he had been scared all along, imagining Emily might be lying in a hospital somewhere, or trapped in some old barn. At least, that's what he wanted them to believe. Detectives believed that if they could track down the house Robert kept mentioning, they might uncover vital clues, or even the mysterious man in the cowboy hat. With Robert leading the way, they drove out to the spot. Nervous about what they might find, they told him to wait by the car while they searched. As they moved closer, something caught their attention: two clear drag marks, cutting away from the road, trailing behind the old house. The detectives decided to follow them. As they followed the drag marks, the path curved around an old building, and there, just beyond it, they saw what they had feared: an obvious body. The scene was grim, with a large amount of blood, especially around the head. It was Emily Lambert. Her body had been abandoned in an open field, left behind like discarded trash. She had severe injuries across her body, and investigators learned she had been dragged nearly 500 feet before coming to rest in that final spot. In an instant, the case shifted from a missing person search to a homicide investigation. When officers returned to share the news with Robert, he looked shocked but showed little genuine emotion. Now, the detectives were worried their emotions might be clouding the case, so they decided it was time to bring in someone new, an investigator who could approach Robert differently and hopefully draw out the truth. While that was happening, another team focused on a Walmart where Emily's body had been found. The store had a security camera aimed right at the highway, and investigators hoped it might capture the mysterious white truck Robert kept mentioning. The manager explained the cameras ran non-stop and the footage was stored on site. Rolling the tape back to the night Emily left the bar, they scanned the highway closely. About an hour later, something finally appeared on screen. They spotted a white truck pulling into the Walmart parking lot and heading over to the gas pumps, but beyond that, the footage gave them little to work with. The camera couldn't capture the occupants, the license plate, or any real detail about the vehicle. The police began to suspect that Emily might have been inside the pickup truck, possibly with the man she met at the motel bar. Eager for answers, they rushed back to the station to review the bar security footage. If they could match anyone from that night to the truck, they did finally have the lead. At 9:30 p.m., the video showed Robert leaving the bar alone while Emily stayed behind. Not long after, a stranger approached her and started a conversation, but the footage was dark, so dark that the details were hard to make out. The video was almost useless, too dark to make out faces, and the man staying in the shadows the entire time. Frustrated but determined, investigators snapped a still image from the footage and headed back to the motel, hoping someone might recognize him. Before long, they got an answer. The man was identified as Gabriel Guy. It was the man who employed Robert. Detectives quickly brought him in for questioning. Gabriel admitted he was the man in the video, but swore he never left the bar, and the motel staff confirmed his alibi. With the lead closed, detectives returned to the footage, this time hunting for the so-called cowboy hat man, but no such figure ever appeared. Back at the station, a fresh face stepped in to handle the interrogation. The new detective is convinced Robert is hiding something, and with Emily's death now confirmed, the pressure is heavier than ever. The goal is simple: break through Robert's calm facade and get to the truth. He switches tactics, softening his tone. Instead of pressing Robert with accusations, he tried to relate with him, speaking more like a friend than an investigator. He tells Robert he understands what it's like to drink too much, to lose control of emotions, to make mistakes in the heat of the moment. The detective's goal is clear: to make Robert feel safe enough to finally come clean. Robert's voice started to tremble, betraying the calm front he's tried so hard to maintain. His words stumbled, his tone uneven, clear signs of mounting anxiety. The detectives can see it too. The walls Robert had built around his story are beginning to crack, and the truth feels closer than ever. As he stepped outside in the cool night air, Robert lights up a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly. The detective stays quiet, giving him space. Then, with the tape recorder quietly running, Robert finally starts to talk. His voice is low, almost as if he's confessing to himself as much as the detective. Piece by piece, the story begins to change. As the night dragged on, Robert's jealousy started to surface, and what began as a simple conversation quickly escalated into an argument. Emily, frustrated and upset, eventually decided she's had enough. She got up and made up her mind to leave the bar. At around 11:30 that night, Emily stormed out of the bar and headed straight for her motel room. Robert followed right behind her, only to find the door locked. Refusing to let go, he hurried to the front desk, asked for a spare key, and let himself in. The moment he stepped inside, the arguments reignited, hotter than before. Inside the room, Emily told Robert she was done. She wanted to grab her things, leave, and drive back home that night. Robert, already walked up, refused to let her go, insisted she wasn't about to get behind the wheel after drinking. That was when the situation spiraled out of control. Voices were raised, tempers flared, and the confrontation turned physical. Emily, furious, lashed onto Robert's arm and beat down hard, leaving a deep mark. It was the moment where the fight crossed a dangerous line. At that moment, Robert's anger boiled over. He lashed out, kicking Emily again and again, and somehow through the pain, she managed to pull herself back to her feet, only for him to strike her down with another brutal kick. As Robert recounted the event, his voice remained steady, almost detached, as if he were describing something ordinary. He explained how he put Emily in a car, drove her towards an open field, and once there, she tried to fight back, but he overpowered her, looped a rope around her neck, and tied it to the vehicle. Then, without hesitation, he began dragging her behind the car. pulling her for more than 500 feet across the rough ground. The medical examiner would later confirm that Emily's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. They determined she was still alive when Robert dragged her behind the vehicle. The injuries showed active bleeding, meaning her heart was still pumping. It wasn't until Robert struck her in the back of the head with the air pump that her life finally came to an end. After killing Emily, Robert left her body in the field and spun a lie about a mysterious man in a cowboy hat, hoping to cover his tracks. During the trial, prosecutors brought forward a chilling piece of evidence, one that reveals Emily's final words. It was one of the most painful moments of the trial. The prosecutors revealed how Robert's phone had accidentally pocket-dialed Emily's phone. The call ended up recording her final moments, capturing what would become her last words. Listening to it in court was almost unbearable, a haunting reminder of the suffering she endured before her death. It was a moment that gripped the courtroom, offering a heart-breaking glimpse into her last moments alive. On May 15, 2015, after only a few hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. Robert Ellie was found guilty of first-degree kidnapping and murder. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the rest of his days behind bars. Emily Lambert's life was cut short in an act of senseless violence, leaving behind 2 young daughters and a grieving family. The lies Robert Ellie fabricated unraveled piece by piece until the truth could no longer be hidden. His life sentence may have brought justice, but it could never undo the pain of what was lost. For Emily's family, the memory of her kindness, her laughter, and her love for her children will always outshine the cruelty of that night. Thanks for watching, and let us have your thoughts.